I was standing there, in that cold mahogany courtroom, feeling the chill of betrayal crawl up my spine. My father sat a few seats ahead, his silver hair perfectly combed, his posture so proud, as if nothing could touch him, not even the daughter he erased from his will. I clutched the edge of the bench, trying to keep my breath steady while the lawyers spoke in a language that felt carved from ice. Ever since Mom passed, he'd treated me like an uninvited guest in my own life, and today, he made it official. When they read out his will, his voice trembled for a moment, but not with guilt. To my beloved son, everything. To my daughter, nothing. I didn't scream. I didn't even blink. I just felt a hollow silence settle into my bones, and in that silence, a quiet seed of something unbreakable began to bloom. Because deep inside, I knew something he didn't. And it was only a matter of time before everyone else would know it too. As I walked out of the courtroom that day, the sun burned bright against my skin, but inside, I felt nothing but frost. My brother, Liam, smirked as he passed me, clutching the signed documents like a prize he'd fought for. He leaned in close, his cologne suffocating. "Told you Dad never cared about you. Go back to your little apartment and stay out of our lives." I didn't respond. I just watched him walk away, his tailored suit brushing against the marble floors as if he owned the world. At that moment, I remembered when we were kids, how he'd hide my birthday cake so I'd cry in front of our friends. Some people never grow out of cruelty. But as his echo faded down the hall, my lawyer approached me quietly. He placed a hand on my shoulder, eyes soft but gleaming with purpose. "Don't lose hope. There's something here. Something your father and brother overlooked." I looked at him, confused, my pulse slowing as if time itself paused. "What do you mean?" He flipped through the pages of the will, then closed the folder with a sharp click. "Come to my office tomorrow. There's a clause no one noticed, and it changes everything." That night, I barely slept. I lay on my worn-out couch, staring at the cracks in the ceiling, listening to the city hum its lonely lullaby outside my window. Memories of Mom drifted through my mind like silent ghosts, her brushing my hair before school, her warm hands teaching me to knead dough in the kitchen, her whispering, "One day, you'll understand your true worth, my love." Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. Morning came like a gray wave. I dressed in my plain navy dress, tied my hair back tightly, and took the crowded bus to the lawyer's office, feeling each bump in the road like a drumbeat of what was coming. When I arrived, he was waiting with a steaming cup of coffee and a document spread wide across his polished desk. "Sit," he said gently. My heart thundered in my chest as I lowered myself into the chair. His finger tapped the paper. "Your mother added an addendum before she died, a clause that overrides your father's conditions. It states, her entire share of the estate goes directly to you." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The world blurred, and then, like a silent tide breaking, the truth washed over me with quiet, unstoppable force. I sat there, frozen, staring at the neat black letters that held my mother's final gift to me. My lawyer's voice seemed distant as he explained the legality, the certainty, the power behind her words. "It's ironclad," he said. "Your father cannot contest this. Your mother owned half of everything, and she left it all to you. Half of everything. $2.5 million. My breath trembled as tears finally fell, not from sadness or anger, but from an ache so deep it felt like my soul was breaking open. "Mom, you knew." In that small office, sunlight filtering through dusty blinds, I felt her presence surround me, her quiet strength seeping into my bones. Suddenly, my phone buzzed on the table, pulling me back. It was Liam. A single text. "Stay away from Dad's house today. We're celebrating." I wiped my tears, my chest rising with a silent determination. They were celebrating my erasure. But they had no idea the real celebration was just beginning. Because for the first time, I felt something they could never buy. Unstoppable. The next day, I stood outside my father's mansion, the one with the black iron gates and manicured gardens that once felt like home. Through the windows, I saw them laughing, glasses of champagne raised high, Liam with his arm around Dad's shoulders, their smiles sharp as blades. For a moment, pain pricked at my chest, but it didn't stay. Because in my hand, I held the final document my lawyer had prepared. I walked up the steps slowly, feeling the summer breeze brush against my face, feeling reborn. When I rang the bell, the maid opened the door, her eyes widening in shock. I stepped into the marble foyer, the familiar scent of polished wood and roses washing over me like an old song. Liam turned first, his grin fading instantly. "What are you doing here?" he spat. Dad stood behind him, confusion darkening his eyes. I held up the document without a word, my fingers steady, my voice calm. "We need to talk." For once, they were silent. The girl they thought they erased was no longer begging for a seat at their table. She was here to claim what was hers. I sat down across from them at the grand dining table, the same table where Dad once made me eat in silence while Liam bragged about his school trophies. My hands didn't shake this time as I laid the document flat, turning it towards them. Dad's eyes scanned the words, his face paling with each line he read. Liam leaned over his shoulder, his smirk twisting into rage. This can't be real! She gets half!" he shouted, his voice cracking. Dad's fingers gripped the edge of the table until his knuckles turned white. "Your mother. She betrayed me," he whispered, more to himself than to me. I felt no pity, only a quiet sadness for the man who spent his life trying to own everything, only to lose what truly mattered. I folded my hands calmly. "She didn't betray you. She protected me." Liam slammed his fist on the table, making the silverware rattle. "You think you're entitled to this? You think you deserve it?" I met his glare with a steady gaze, feeling Mom's strength pulsing through me. "I don't think it. I know it." Dad leaned back in his chair, his eyes glassy as if he was seeing me for the first time in his life. "You were always so quiet, so obedient. I never thought you'd have the nerve to fight back." His voice was low, almost bitter, and for a second, I almost saw regret flicker in his gaze. But Liam cut through the silence with his venom. "This isn't over. We'll fight it in court. You think some dusty clause is enough to take what's ours?" His words echoed through the marble halls, but they didn't touch me. I folded the document neatly, slipping it back into my purse. "You can try," but Mom made sure this was unbreakable. I stood up, feeling taller than I ever had in their presence. As I walked past Dad, he reached out, his fingers brushing my wrist lightly. "Why didn't you just stay quiet, like you always did?" I turned to him, my heart calm. "Because staying quiet cost me her. I won't let it cost me myself." And with that, I left them there, stunned, silent, powerless for once. When I stepped outside, the sky felt brighter, almost golden, as if the world itself was acknowledging my quiet victory. I walked down the stone steps with my head held high, each step feeling lighter than the last. As I reached the gate, I turned back one final time, looking at the mansion that once held every memory of my childhood, the laughter, the tears, the silent dinners, and my mother's humming in the kitchen. It was never about the money. It was about reclaiming the dignity they tried to strip away from me. My phone buzzed in my bag, pulling me from my thoughts. It was a message from my lawyer. "Congratulations! The funds are being transferred today. Let me know if you need assistance setting up your new accounts." I let out a slow breath, tears gathering in my eyes, not from relief, but from an overwhelming sense of peace. They had tried to erase me from their story, but here I was, writing my own chapter. And this time, it wouldn't be written in whispers or shadows. It would be written in unstoppable light. That evening, I sat by my small window, watching the city lights flicker like distant stars. My apartment, once a symbol of struggle, felt different now. It wasn't about luxury or proving anything to them. It was about finally feeling safe in my own skin. As I sipped my tea, I thought of Mom's soft voice reading me bedtime stories, her fingers brushing through my hair as she whispered, "Remember, my love, your worth isn't given by them. It's born within you." For so long, I tried to be invisible, thinking it would hurt less if I just blended in. But invisibility had a price. It cost me my confidence, my dreams, my peace. I took out a notebook from my drawer and wrote down one sentence. They expected me to disappear. I didn't. The words glowed under the warm lamplight, like a promise. Closing the notebook, I felt a small smile spread across my lips. Tomorrow, I would meet with a financial advisor. But tonight, I allowed myself to simply exist, wrapped in quiet dignity, knowing my mother's love had built the bridge that brought me back to myself. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise. For the first time in years, there was no heavy stone pressing on my chest, no dread curling in my stomach. I brewed fresh coffee, feeling its warmth seep into my hands as dawn painted streaks of gold across the city skyline. Sitting at my small kitchen table, I pulled out the document again, reading my mother's signature at the bottom. Her final act of love. I closed my eyes, imagining her smile, her gentle strength that never needed loud words to be heard. My phone buzzed with another message from Liam. "This isn't over. You're still nothing without us." I read it twice, feeling nothing but calm. I didn't reply. Instead, I blocked his number, deleting every trace of his cruelty from my life. Silence filled the room, not empty, but peaceful. They had tried to define me with their hate, but in this quiet morning light, I knew the truth. I was not their nothing. I was my mother's everything. And now, I was finally my own. Later that day, I found myself walking through a neighborhood I used to dream about as a child. Tree-lined streets, quiet cafes, and houses that looked like paintings. I paused in front of one particular white brick home with blue shutters and blooming hydrangeas lining the path. A for sale sign swayed gently in the breeze. My heart fluttered with a feeling I hadn't known in years. Hope. I called the agent listed on the sign, and within an hour, I was walking through the sunlit rooms, imagining my books lining the shelves, the smell of fresh bread drifting from the kitchen, and my mother's portrait hanging above the fireplace. The agent smiled at me warmly, not knowing the battles I had fought to stand there. As I signed the initial offer, my hands felt steady, strong. This wasn't about revenge. It was about building a life rooted in dignity. Leaving the house, I glanced back at the blooming garden and whispered under my breath, "We're home, Mom." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. The following week passed in a gentle blur. I met with my financial advisor, who spoke of investments, trusts, and protection plans with reassuring confidence. For every number and strategy he listed, I felt a silent layer of fear peel away from my chest. One evening, after finalizing the house purchase, I walked to the small bakery on the corner, the smell of cinnamon and vanilla wrapping around me like an old memory. I ordered a single cupcake with white frosting and a sugar daisy on top. Sitting by the window, I closed my eyes and let the sweetness melt on my tongue. Mom would have loved this, I thought, imagining her sitting across from me, her eyes crinkling with that secret smile she saved only for me. As twilight darkened the streets outside, I realized something quietly powerful. Their rejection no longer defined me. Their hatred no longer chained me. I was no longer the forgotten daughter or the silent girl in the corner. I was a woman reborn from their cruelty, a woman anchored in her mother's love, unstoppable in her quiet grace. A few days later, I received a formal letter from Liam's attorney. It was filled with threats of lawsuits, claims that I had manipulated our mother, accusations as cold and hollow as his heart. I read each line slowly, sipping my morning coffee, feeling nothing but a quiet ache for the brother I once loved. Instead of fear, a soft sadness settled in me. I called my lawyer, forwarding the letter without comment. "Don't worry," he said firmly. "They have no case. Your mother's clause was clear. They're just trying to scare you." I thanked him and hung up, staring out at the morning sun spilling across my new kitchen counters. They could scream, threaten, and writhe in their own bitterness, but none of it could reach me anymore. Later, as I unpacked my books into tall oak shelves, I ran my fingers along their spines, feeling the stories pulse beneath my touch. I smiled quietly to myself. They underestimated me my entire life. But it was their underestimation that became my greatest shield. Their hate made me silent. Their silence made me strong. That weekend, I invited a few close friends to see my new home. As they arrived, their eyes widened at the sunlit rooms, the cozy reading corners, and the small garden blooming with roses and lavender. "This place is so you," one of them whispered, hugging me tightly. I laughed softly, feeling the warmth of genuine love surround me for the first time in years. Later, as we sat around the kitchen island eating pasta and sipping wine, I shared parts of my story, not the legal battles, but the silent war I fought within myself. One friend reached out, tears in her eyes. "I hope you know. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met." Her words settled into my chest like a balm. That night, after they left, I stood barefoot in my living room, looking around at the space that was finally mine. I whispered to the empty room, "Thank you, Mom, for teaching me that silence isn't weakness. It's just the quiet before the bloom." And with that, I felt my soul exhale, releasing the last threads of their power over me. Months later, as autumn painted the trees in amber and gold, I visited my mother's grave with a single white rose in hand. The cemetery was quiet, the wind carrying whispers of falling leaves. Kneeling down, I placed the rose gently against her name etched in stone. "I did it, Mom," I whispered, my voice trembling with a mixture of sorrow and fierce gratitude. "They tried to erase me, but you made sure I'd never disappear." Tears slid down my cheeks, warm against the crisp air. I sat there for a long time, telling her about the house, my new garden, the bookshelves lined with stories we once read together. As I stood to leave, I felt a deep, powerful peace settle in my chest. On my way out, my phone buzzed with a message from my lawyer confirming the finalization of all her transferred assets. I smiled softly, slipping the phone back into my pocket. They would never understand what true wealth was. It wasn't the money. It was this moment, standing tall, heart unburdened, carrying her love within me like an unbreakable flame. Thank you for watching until the end. If you've ever lived through something similar, feeling underestimated, erased, or forced into silence, share your story in the comments below. Your voice might be the quiet strength someone else needs today. And don't forget to subscribe and hit like, because sometimes the loudest impact is made in silence.